Hey folks, back with another video. So this is something that I talked about in a short earlier this week, that I was going to make a video reviewing these ARB diff covers that I have on my 2024 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. So this has the M220 and M210 axles, the Dana 44s front and rear. The rear axle is slightly larger, it's 220 millimeters versus the 210 millimeter ring gear in the front, but they're both considered a Dana 44. So I've had these ARB diff covers on them for about a year now, a little over a year, about 11 or 12,000 miles. And as you can see, you know, this Jeep has been off-road. It's not a mall crawler or anything like that. It really does get used for what it's built for. This has been used all over the United States. One of the first places that I went to with these diff covers was Moab, Utah. So it was used all over Utah. Took it to Sand Hollow. Took it to a bunch of trails all over. Got some badges of honor as well. It's been all over California, Southern Nevada. So I really put them to the test. I haven't hit too many things with them, especially the rear diff cover, but you know, they've been underwater. They've hit sand, not too many rocks though. With that said, it's very thick steel. I don't know exactly how thick it is, but I'm sure it's thick enough for whatever you're doing with the Dana 44 axle. If this diff cover isn't enough for your Dana 44, you probably need something like a Dana 60. Let's be honest. So the purpose of this video is to be sort of like a review, but mainly to just provide my experience, given all my years of four-wheel driving with various different vehicles, and why I decided to install the equipment that I did and why I've continued to use it. So I had two main reasons for installing the diff covers on this Jeep. One was that coming from Toyota land and Land Rover land, there's no such thing as replaceable diff covers with those manufacturers. The diff cover is part of the axle housing, so there's no means to replace it, and you just kind of hope for the best or weld on some sort of protection. I never did that, never really had any issues without doing that, to be honest, but with the Dana 44 on the Jeep, it was an opportunity to have some more protection there, have some more peace of mind. So that was the main motivation, was that the opportunity was there. It's something that we could do. The other motivation was that this Jeep, I know on some older JLs, 2018, 19, maybe 2020, they had drain plugs in the axle housing. This one does not. It went away sometime in 21 or 22, and my 2024 does not have any sort of provision like that. Replacing the differential fluid on the front or rear axle involved removing the differential cover, which isn't necessarily a huge deal, as they include a reusable gasket with these cars now, and that's really handy to have, to be honest. I still have both of mine on this car, but not necessarily the most elegant way or the fastest way to service the axle. Considering that I do a lot of four-wheel driving with this, a lot of off-road, and the fact that these axles don't hold that much fluid, you know, less than 2 quarts, whereas on a lot of Toyota axles that have smaller ring gears, they hold 3, 4, sometimes 5 quarts. I wanted to change the fluid more frequently, just in case I got any extra dirt in there or water or anything like that. Usually after a big four-wheeling trip, all the fluids on this get changed, the axles, the transmission, and the transfer case. Again, for those that don't know, my Jeep has a manual transmission, so changing the fluid on that is a lot less involved than changing the fluid on the 8-speed automatic. With this differential cover, you get a drain plug right there. It's right at the bottom of the housing. It gets all the fluid out. Also has a nice magnet on there to gather any sort of debris, just like the fill plug on the stock cover. You know, on the stock cover you have a magnetic fill plug, and that again captures a lot of that steel debris. So the fill plug on this gets a little interesting. So you have basically a dipstick over here, and this is where you fill it, and it's got I believe an 8mm hex key to open it. The problem with this dipstick is that it's very hard to read. It's also very hard to mark the level. The level doesn't come marked from the ARB factory, and they instruct you to mark it yourself to get it to the original level. And for the life of me, I really struggle with that. I wasn't really able to mark it properly, or in a way that's legible, or in a way that I trust every time I do a differential fluid change. So that gets a little annoying, to be honest. That's why I have this yellow mark here I know that this is where the differential fluid is supposed to be. The other issue is, you see how my differential cover here is covered in mud. The fill port is right at the top here. So if you have to clean this very carefully, because you will get dirt that accumulates on top of here, around here, because it's at the top of the cover. And it's a flat surface. You can basically trap a lot of dirt. So you have to thoroughly clean that. And I usually just use like some sort of glass cleaner. So anyways, we'll do that today just as a demonstration. I've got a rag here with some cleaner. I'm just gonna clean around the dipstick. I suppose you could shine up the cover if you want. This part where it says ARB, they actually mill this so you get a shiny finish and clear coat over it. Problem is, after about 2 months, it starts to rust and the clear coat flaked off. So I sanded it back and then put this dark silver touch-up paint on there and then cleared over it. So again, you need an 8mm hex key to open it up. I've got one that goes on a 3/8" ratchet. So I like to go in front of the sway bar. That way the ratchet handles over the axle tube and I can just kind of unscrew it like that. Again, this is sealed with an O-ring. The actual plug itself, the top of it, is knurled. So once you loosen it, you can just get the rest of it by hand. And there you go, once it's loose, you can pull the whole thing out. So you can see I've marked the dipstick here by scraping off the black material, so you can see the exposed steel underneath. Well, that kind of helps. You can see how when you have really clean fluid, it's really hard to tell where exactly your mark is. That's why I also put the paint mark on the diff cover. So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe off the dipstick as best I can. It also has a magnet on the tip, so I'm gonna clean off the magnet as best I can. And you can see it's all clean now, so I'm just gonna drop it in till it seats and then pull it out. And we've got our level reading, and you can see it goes right about to the bottom of those markings there. So I'm pretty happy with that. As you can see though, it's not necessarily the most straightforward way of reading the diff fluid level. It certainly would have been easier if there was just a plug like right there. So when you'd open it, fluid would come out, and that's how you know the differential is full. One other thing to note, I've had to replace the O-rings on the plugs once at this point. I don't know what it is with the factory O-rings, but they just kind of get smushed and then they start to tear. They were still sealing, they hadn't started leaking or anything like that, but I didn't want to wait until the point that they did. So I just went ahead and replaced them. I got the O-rings from a universal kit. All right, folks, so that's my experience with the ARB diff cover. I would say it's a worthy modification if you are doing some extreme four-wheeling, or if you just want the peace of mind to have extra protection, or if you want a little bit easier serviceability. Again, it just comes with the con of it's hard to figure out what your fluid level is with the dipstick. I was hoping the Dana Spicer cover would have a drain on this, kind of like how the cover for the Ford 9.75" rear axle has. Dana Spicer makes a cover for that and made a video about it. That also has a drain plug, but for their own axle, they don't make a cover with a drain plug. So I don't know what's going on there. I know a lot of folks like the ability to remove the cover and check the gears when you're doing a service. I don't feel like that's necessary, unless if there's some sort of issue, or again, if there's anything indicated on the magnets that, hey, maybe there's a bigger problem going on in here. And at that point, I'd probably remove the cover. But I think just for regular, 20, 30, 50, 60,000 mile servicing, I don't really need to take a peek in there. Given that this is probably the only differential cover that I've found for this vehicle that has a drain plug, I would still buy it again. They all more or less offer the same protection. They are all very durable and more than what I need. But if something came along that just had a standard fill plug instead of this dipstick deal, I would probably buy that and I wouldn't buy this. I don't know if or when something like that would ever come along, but if it does, I probably would buy it and replace these. With that said, the design is as advertised. It does protect your differentials quite well. It's about 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch of steel that goes over them. I haven't measured it. I don't really remember what the measurement was. I just know it's really thick steel. For the most part, it does make servicing easier. It's at least faster to do because I don't have to unbolt the cover to get the fluid out, right? It's just 2 plugs, and I just have to be a little bit more cognizant of how much fluid I put in there. But again, I've done 2 or 3 fluid changes on this with no problem. After checking the fluid level once or twice after replacing it, I don't really have to worry about it anymore, and I know I'm good to go. The channel has grown a lot in the past week or two. I really appreciate that. We're getting more subscribers, a lot more viewership. So thank you very much.